This is Ahval Online, meeting point of accurate news and free comment on the current affairs of Turkey. Welcome to our podcast series. Hello and welcome to Hot Pursuit, part of Ahval's video and podcast series. Today, my guest is joining me from Washington, D.C., Merve Tahiroğlu, Turkey Program Director of POMED, Project on Middle East and Democracy. Good to have you here, Merve.
Hi, hello.
So let's have a brief tour d'horizon about Turkish-American relations, the recent tension within NATO, Sweden and Finland being the actors in it, and also the potential incursion of the Turkish armed forces onto Syrian, especially Kobane enclave or region. The incursion seems imminent, but it has still not taken place. But the expectations or guesses are that it will be taking place. Let's begin with the Turkish-American relations. Recent reports or hearsay, let's say, that is reflected on certain reports is that the US is keeping, the Biden administration is keeping Erdoğan administration at arm's distance. So cold shoulder and also alienation, maybe. Can we say a deepening Cold War between two administrations because of the tensions and crisis creation, escalation that's created mainly by Ankara regarding Syria, regarding European Union, NATO, and also Greece?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an intention on the part of the Biden administration to keep Erdoğan's government at arm's length at this point. We've seen this with the meeting between Secretary Blinken and Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu just a few weeks ago. But it's definitely become all the more pronounced since Erdoğan's declaration that Turkey would potentially veto the accession of Finland and Sweden into NATO, which is, has created a bit of a crisis within NATO at this time. I think, Turkey's and specifically Erdoğan's reaction to Finland and Sweden at a time like this, when for NATO it's so important to have some coherence and show itself as a strong force, a growing force against Russia in order to deter Russia from taking actions like it did in Ukraine again in the future. At a time like this, one country, Turkey, coming out as the problem and saying that I might actually stop this from happening. I think this is really the tip of the iceberg in terms of how Erdoğan's Turkey has behaved within NATO and other multilateral institutions like the Council of Europe in the past few years. It has, whether it's been watering down statements, joint statements, unanimous statements that are coming out of these institutions against Russia and Russian aggression, whether it's been, unilateral policies that Turkey has pursued that has come at the expense of the interests of NATO or the United States or other NATO members like Greece, all of these put together have clearly painted a picture that Erdoğan's Turkey is a deep problem to have within NATO. And this is the reason why I think the Biden administration really wants to keep an arm's length with Erdoğan. And add to that the fact that Erdoğan is an increasingly autocratic, man. Every day he does something that is more and more oppressive against his own people. He's now taking, we're facing an election in Turkey in about a year. And, over the course of that year, we expect like many more transgressions against Turkish democracy and human rights to happen. All of these reasons together for an administration like the Biden administration that purports to, defend democracy in the world against, rising autocratic tides, I think is enough cause to keep Erdoğan and Erdoğan's government at bay, at least until the 2023 election, I think.
There is also the sort of growing realization that the appeasement or enabling the government in Ankara, especially when democratic bloc is battling Putin, similar type of autocrat, it seems that the appeasement seems to be weakening, trend of appeasement, and the realization is becoming more and more visible in that sense. Can we see that in the same context, that the keeping Erdoğan at arm's length may mean some sort of awakening, awareness about how to approach such an administration, or is it just a passing trend?
Well, I do hope there is such an awakening in the Biden administration about this, because they have had a policy of appeasement towards not just Turkey, but many other countries. And especially now, there's very controversially this idea that Biden might be visiting Saudi Arabia and meeting with Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince. I think, all of this shows, and, policies towards Egypt, all of this shows that the Biden administration does appease leaders like this when it feels that it has to. And certainly all the discussion about providing F-16s to Turkey as a sort of thank you for Turkey's sale of drones, Bayraktar drones, to Ukraine in this war with Russia. I think that was also part of this trend of appeasing leaders like that. However, we are seeing that diminish a little bit. I think Erdogan's reaction to Finland and Sweden really struck a chord in NATO. And also right after that, he said that he was going to, he plans on carrying out this operation in Syria, despite the fact that Russia, NATO, the United States, Iran, Syria, all these countries have come out and said that we don't want to see such an operation. I think it's likely that Erdogan will carry it on. Every single statement he makes and his government makes it shows us that. And then now more recently, the reaction against Greece, saying that you're no longer my friend and I'm going to go back to potentially a confrontational policy towards Greece, has shown, hopefully, both NATO and the United States that appeasing doesn't really work. So I think all that the Biden administration wants to do right now is crisis management with Turkey, but far from having big meetings between Biden and Erdogan, not even a phone call. Biden attests to that as much, responding to reporters. He said he has no intention of calling Erdogan. I don't think they're going to try to the US is going to try to insert itself strongly into the negotiations between Finland, Sweden, and Turkey. They think NATO should have that role, and Stoltenberg will be carrying out that role. So definitely keeping at arm's length. I think that's the current policy.
Keeping at arm's length. Do you think it's a coherent policy between the key institutions in Washington, D.C., Pentagon, State Department, and White House?
No, and it's a shifting policy too. I think, keeping arm's length, it changes, right? I mean, just a few weeks ago, right before Erdogan came out against Finland and Sweden, we were seeing a very strong effort by the Biden administration towards Congress and towards, I think, the Defense Department to try to get these F-16s to be sold to Turkey. So I think there is a bit of a shifting in behavior by the Biden administration as well. But overall, what's coherent is that as long as Erdogan continues to make Turkey a problematic ally of multilateral institutions like NATO, like the Council of Europe, which is also important. Multilateral institutions continue to pursue policies that go against US interests or NATO's interests, and at the same time, dial up his oppressive policies at home, especially ahead of a very critical election in Turkey. I think as long as all of these factors are going to be in place, we're not going to see a positive embrace by Biden of Erdogan.
Which brings us to the core point of the conflict now rising, the potential incursion onto Syrian soil by Turkish armed forces. That is, of course, basically confronting the Biden administration and also the ISIS, coalition against ISIS. How does one see in Washington D.C. the potential how imminent this is, and how is Erdogan seen in this choreography, sort of balancing between Moscow and Washington, or what is the view?
Well, Turkey has been following its own policy in Syria, without the blessings of the United States for a very long time now, and it has been cooperating with Russia on every single aspect of its policy in Syria. So I think with this operation too, ultimately what Turkey needs is a green light from Russia and not from the United States. The United States knows this as well. So I think this upcoming visit of Foreign Minister Lavrov to Turkey, one of the key aspects of the discussion between Turkey and Russia here in this meeting is going to be Turkey's efforts to try to get a green light, or at least a blind eye to Turkey's operation in Syria. I don't know what Turkey is going to offer Russia, in exchange for that, but I think they're going to be making a strong push for that because Erdoğan really wants this operation. He really needs this operation to boost nationalist fervor in Turkey ahead of critical elections in which he seems to be losing, according to every single opinion poll. And also, given that the refugee issue in Turkey has become so prominent, so central to domestic politics in recent months, I think one of the goals Erdoğan has with this operation, and this is why he keeps saying, I'm going to create a safe zone, is to try to show his electorate that he is doing something towards solving Turkey's refugee problem, towards sending the refugees back. I think that's a pipe dream. It's probably not going to happen, but at least he wants to demonstrate to his people that he is doing things unlike the opposition parties towards solving this problem. So Turkey is most likely going to do it. And I think from Washington's perspective, it looks clearly as an election domestic ploy.
And also, one should be added that the large segments of the opposition would be already, gave their consent for the military operation onto Syria, which of course complicates the political picture in Turkey. As always, it is complex, it is complicated. Merve Tahiroğlu, the Turkey Program Director of POMED, Project on Middle East and Democracy. Thank you for this valuable assessment about the latest, where we are at the ongoing crisis. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much.
You can follow Ahval News Online podcast series through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, and Spreaker. All you need to know about Turkey is here, for your ears, mind, and attention. Thank you for listening to our podcast.